So tritone substitutions are great, mainly used in jazz, but are good for a lot of different things. And basically what our goal here is to take our 5 chord, the dominant 7 chord, and replace it with the dominant 7 chord, a tritone above that, to resolve to our 1. Alright, so first I'm going to go through why it is that our 5 chord and our 1 chord have such an important relationship. At least briefly, because I have a whole blog post about that. And then I'm going to talk about how the tritone substitution plays essentially the same role. Alright, so if we take a look at our, in the key of C, at our 5 chord, which is a G7 chord, to a 1 chord, which is a C, basically what we're going to be finding is that the 3rd and 7th are going to resolve to the 3 and the 1 of our 1 chord. So that's the 3rd and the 7th of our 5 chord are going to resolve to the 3rd and the 1 to our 1 chord. Now I'm going to be using smaller shapes of our chords so we can really see how this works. But if I play my G7 like this with my 2nd finger on the 6th string 3rd fret, my 3rd finger on the 4th string 3rd fret, and my pinky on the 4th fret 3rd string, there's my G7. Alright, I can see that the 7th and the 3rd, my F, which is my 7th, and then my 3rd, which is my 3rd, or my B, which is my 3rd, are going to resolve. My F, the 7th, is going to resolve down to the 3rd of the C, which is an E note, and then the 3rd of my 5, which is a B, is going to resolve up to the 1 of my C chord, which is the C. Again, that's one of the many reasons why the dominant 7 chord is so important, is that we have that really strong pull between this tension between those two notes to a nice resolved ending on our 1 chord. And now when we take a look at the tritone above our 5 chord, so a tritone is basically going to be a flat 5, so we can kind of think about it. If we're going from the 6th to the 5th string, it's going to be on the 5th string, up 1 fret from where our 5 chord is. So the tritone of G is going to be D flat, or we can also think about it as just a half step above our 1 chord. That makes it any easier. So C is our 1, so D flat. Anyways, however we get there, we're going to see that our D flat 7 actually plays the same function, or has the same notes resolve the same way, although the roles in the D flat 7 chord are going to switch. Alright, so here's what I mean by that. Here's my D flat 7 chord. I'm playing it almost like a D flat 9 chord, while I'm just kind of taking out that 2nd string just so we could see exactly what we need to see. So here's my D flat 7 chord on the 4th fret. My root note is on the 4th fret, or 4th string, 5th string, 4th fret. There we go. And the 3rd of the chord is an F, which was the 7th of G7, and B is my flat 7 of my D flat, which was the 3rd of my G7, and those are going to resolve the exact same way. So it's important to kind of see that role so that way we understand why the tritone substitution works so well. Alright, so cool, we understand how it works. Now, how can we kind of place it in? Now, if we take a look at like a 2-5-1, which is a very common jazz progression, I'm going to play a D minor 7 to a G7 to a C major 7. Alright, we can actually totally replace my G7 with like a D7, D flat 7, or kind of any extended version of our D flat 7, like a D flat 9. So I could play a D minor 7, D flat 9, C major 7. Kind of a neat way that we can go ahead and kind of implement some of these. Alright, so we can actually use it just as a way to completely just substitute our 5 chord. Now, another way that we can do this is going to be on the 6th string. So I'm going to take the same key, still in the key of C, my 2-5-1, which is a D minor 7, and then my 5, which is a G7, and my 1, which is a C major 7. But this time, I'm going to find my my D minor on the 10th fret on the 6th string. My G7 is going to be right there, 10th fret 5th string, and here's my C major 7. Alright, now instead of playing this G7, I can go ahead and play like a D flat 7 sharp 11. Again, here's another extended version. We can also just play just a normal D flat 7. But I tend to like this one, and go right back to our C major 7 right there. So instead of a G, or instead of a G7, we can replace that with the tritone. There we go. Now, if we're going from the 5th string to the 6th string as our tritone, it's going to be on the 6th string, just 1 fret lower than our root note of our 5 chord. Awesome, cool. Now, if you don't play jazz, it can still be pretty neat. Like, let's say I'm writing a song and it's going C, A minor, F, G. But to me that sounds a little bland. Alright, what else can I kind of do to this? Maybe what I can do is, instead of just completely substituting our 5 chord, maybe I can just go ahead and maybe on the last beat or the last 2 beats, I can throw in like a D flat 9. Here's C, A minor, F, G. Now that's just one example of how we can use it, and there's a bunch of other ways that we can use it, but I thought this was a good way that we can kind of see how some of these chords are being used. Now, not only is this useful for rhythm guitar, this is also useful for lead guitar. Let's say we're soloing over like a 2-5-1 in the key of C, D minor 7, G7, and C major 7. Now what we can actually do is, if we're playing our arpeggios, we can go ahead and plug in that dominant 7, that Tritone Substitutions arpeggio, and have it kind of work our way to that C major 7. So I can play my D minor 7 arpeggio, then that D flat 7 arpeggio, and then I can end it right there on the root, right there. I have a whole blog post built around the importance of the dominant 7th chord. But another thing I want to mention here is that since we have so much tension between these 2 notes, and it resolves so nicely, is that typically on that 5 chord, you'll see, like on jazz charts, you'll see a lot of sharps this, sharps that, flat this, flat that. It's because we actually have that's our freest chord that we can kind of do almost whatever we want around it. So that's why something like this tritone substitution works so well. And if we're going to be going ahead and playing our arpeggios over it, we can almost think of it as like a G7 alt, since this kind of acts as like a flat 5 right there. Alright? So, just a couple different ways to think about our tritone substitutions and how we can implement them.